First of all, I want to welcome everybody to our KnowBe4 training series here. This is our kind of first session. As the service kind of develops and people get using the system more, we'll be adding kind of more additional sessions for some more advanced features of the software. To reintroduce ourselves, my name is Derek Lalone, and this is
Chris Schaefer.
And we are the KnowBe4 support specialists on the Model Schools team here at the RIC. So any questions that you guys have, we'll have our contact information posted at the end of the session today. But with that, we can go ahead and get started with our presentation.
As a quick reminder, if you didn't see it in the chat, we do have the chat going. I have an earbud in because I'm monitoring that as we go through. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them there and we'll address them as soon as we can.
So to do a quick review of what we're going to be covering today, we're going to go through kind of the big things for the setup. First of all, our users, just doing a quick review, creating our baseline campaigns, doing our training setups, and then we're going to touch on the mod store a little bit. So we're going to show you everything that you guys have access to with your KnowBe4 subscription. And then we're also going to quickly touch on the rollout review again. And then finally, we're going to talk about ASAP, which is kind of a diagnostic built into KnowBe4 that helps kind of assess and aid you in the creation of campaigns and trainings. So with that, we just wanted to do a quick review of our rollout plan. The first thing that we wanted to touch on is that your users should be uploaded into the system. We know we've had a lot of folks come back and say that they've had a lot of inactive users, and we're going to kind of touch on really quickly how to get rid of those users and kind of clean that up. Next up, we're going to talk about, after we've kind of confirmed our users, we're going to talk about creating our baseline phishing campaign. And then the other thing that we want to touch on as you're rolling things out is we want to make sure that we're notifying our staff after we do the baseline phishing campaign that, hey, this is kind of our risk score as a district, and the things that we're going to start doing next. We're going to continue doing more campaigns, and at the same time, we're going to be implementing different training modules for you as staff members to take throughout the course of the year. And then from there, that's when we start developing those initial training campaigns and getting folks enrolled in the system for their interactive trainings through KnowBe4.
So the first main section we really want to touch on today is just the users section of the KnowBe4 platform. So one thing we've noted, and many of you have talked to us about already, is that the import files that we grabbed seem to have quite a few inactive staff for some of our districts. We are posting, or we have posted, a video on our Google website, which we'll show the link to later on if you didn't keep it from the previous training, that walks you through the process of going through and manually making staff archived or inactive in the system, and that will remove them from the staff listing. One thing that we do want to note is that the AD sync is the long-term goal. So we're going to start working on a timeline to regionally help you set up AD sync with your KnowBe4 dashboard. And that way, A, it's going to make it easier now, but also long-term, you won't be managing users as you go forward.
So the next portion we're going to touch on is creating our phishing campaigns. And really what we're going to talk about is what it looks like when you create one, and then what the reporting looks like after the fact, so you can kind of assess your fish prone percentage. That's a very hard thing to say. And not only as a district, but we can also kind of break it down by individual users as well.
So once you've done your baseline phishing campaign, the next thing you really want to start thinking about in terms of the actual dashboard as an administrator is setting up some training. And we've had quite a few questions on training, so we're going to spend a little bit of time kind of talking about that. So there are some main areas that we've identified within the training modules that are in the KnowBe4 mod store, which we'll cover in a few minutes. That are kind of, the mod store is basically the bank of training modules that are available within the platform. So these are some of the main areas that we think fit well into the new EdLaw 2D requirements and are things that, in addition to the basic Kevin Mitnick 45-minute overall video that we recommended in the initial workshop, these are some areas that you may want to consider rolling out some additional training. This could be either staff-wide for everybody, or it could be for those people that you identify as the high-risk users that maybe click on the phishing campaigns as they're ongoing. You could enroll them into some of the training that falls into these categories. And it doesn't necessarily have to line up with the topic of the phishing campaign that you're doing. These are all important topics that your staff's going to need training on, and these all have modules which we've identified on our Google site, specifically from the mod store, that kind of fit into these different categories. So I'm not going to go through them one by one, but we did just want to identify that. So in the Google site, we just wanted to point out that under step 5, there's a new page called recommended training modules, and that's where we've created the list of all of those training modules that fall into those categories, and at the top we've put the baseline 45-minute training that we definitely recommend you push out as well.
And we'll also be sharing out the presentation, because I know that Chris and I are completely blocking the link right now. So, but we will share this information out after the webinar is concluded.
Absolutely.
So the next thing that we're going to talk about, like Chris said, is the mod store. And really what this is we're just going to do an overview of what you guys have access to, which is virtually everything that KnowBe4 has to offer. And it's basically as simple as opening up the mods that you want to get. You can preview them right inside the windows, and then you just have to click add to my account, and then that becomes a training campaign now available to your school district. And there's no limitation on what trainings you have access to, you download, or you use within the district. So we're going to touch on that, and then we're going to jump over to ASAP.
So the ASAP tab within the admin panel of KnowBe4 is really a questionnaire that you're able to fill out. It's definitely not required. You can do everything within the software your own without doing this. The nice part about the ASAP tab is with this questionnaire, it asks you about your deployment size and your goals with your initiative. And based on the questions that they ask and the answers you give, it customizes a timeline for you that gives you recommended dates for running baseline campaigns and running training. And it gives you a good timeline, not just for that initial setup, but once you've gone through those first few steps, also some good points to keep your initiative viable as you go through not only this year, but also next school year as well. So if you have, I'd say it's less than 5 minutes to fill out the survey that they've created, and then it just gives you a nice live checklist that you can go, and as you finish things, you can check them off, and that way it kind of keeps your initiative on track as you go forward.
And finally, and we'll kind of put this up at the end too, just our contact information for those of you that don't have it, and the links out to our website. So with that, we are going to jump out to our live instance of KnowBe4. And we're just going to jump out to our dashboard. And to kind of re-explain things now that we have a little bit of data here, you can see right away that we've started some campaigns, and you can see the risk scores that are going out. And basically what that means is on any particular day, if more people are clicking than not, depending on your campaigns. And then you can see over here basically where we fall in that phish prone score based on kind of the industry standard. So if we scroll down a little bit, you can see right out of the gate here, it breaks it down into a lot of different graphs. In this case, everything flagged in as pink, so everybody that was kind of an offender in this case, they ended up clicking on a link inside the email. But you can see if they replied to it, if they clicked on an attachment that went through the email, if there was a macro enabled, or if there was an online form that was sent out and they entered data into it. Every one of those things will register within this software, and we'll be able to kind of get a top-down view. The other thing over here is that you can see is, I haven't run a campaign in a little while, but you can see the industry phish prone percentage of the education industry of an organization that is under 250 users is right around 33.6%. So you can see based on our first campaign with our test users that we scored at 22.4. So we are well below the industry phish prone average. So I just wanted to kind of quickly review the dashboard. We're going to touch on the reports at the end too, to kind of get into those really granular reports, even down to the individual user. But the first thing we want to do is jump over to our users tab.
So here in the users tab, you can see this is a list of all users within our test instance. These are just fictional users that we've created to just get some data to show you guys. But basically, when you go into the system, all of your staff should be listed. Right now, it should look pretty similar to what we have in terms of being pretty basic. Once you do set up any Active Directory integration, there is a little icon that's going to appear next to those users, so you'll know who's being managed through Active Directory. And that's a nice thing to know so that you don't accidentally remove a user that should have been in the system because they synced in. But one thing we do want to point out is if you need to edit this list, you can simply check the boxes to the left of any user, and then above the user list there's a red box that says archive, and when you select that box, a drop down appears and it lets you archive any of the users that you've selected. That takes them out of your user list. It keeps them in the system as an archived user, so their data is still available later on. And once you've done training, it does keep the information in the system that they completed a training. So if someone leaves the district and then emails and says, hey, can I get a verification that I completed that training, you'll be able to verify that through the system even after they've been archived.
And the other big thing that we want to touch on within our users area is creating groups. So we touched on this in the beginning of the training, is that you as a district can go in and create as many different groups as you want. One of the groups that they recommend that you create is a clicker group. In this case, we created a Fisher group. But just to kind of give you an idea of what creating a group within KnowBe4 looks like, from the Groups tab here, if I just come up to the top and select a new group, and in this case, if I want to say teachers, and in this case, because they're not a high-risk group or anything along those lines, we can keep them right at this normal risk area. If it is like a clicker group or somebody that is kind of a repeat offender as far as how they're clicking within KnowBe4, we can adjust those groups to be a higher risk group. But in this case, I'm just going to create a generic teacher group. And now if I want to assign people to that group, if I come back to my users, I can come in and let's say I click on these three users over here on the right-hand side. I can come down, I can select my teachers group and add those three users to my group. So when we start talking about kind of fine-tuning our phishing campaigns and our training campaigns, we can set it up so we can just phish our administrative staff, just phish our teaching staff, just phish the elementary school. We can set those groups up and customize them however you want. And then we can also create groups after the fact. So if it's one of those things where somebody clicks on a phishing email, we can automatically put them in that phishing group. And then from the training campaigns, anytime somebody gets enrolled into that phishing group, we can automate it so they're automatically assigned training. So we can kind of automate those processes using the groups as we move forward. So.
Yep. So those groups carry over across the entire software. So if you put someone into a group, they're not limited to just that group either. They can be in multiple groups. So you could have a full teachers group with all staff and then have an additional group that identifies your users by building if you feel like that's necessary for your initiative. We aren't going to dictate any groups for you. We're just kind of showing you the options so that you can customize it to meet your needs in the district.
And really quick over here on the right-hand side, we have the additional options of we can clone our groups, we can go in and edit them, we can delete them. We also have this nice feature, remove all users. So if you are a large district that has hundreds of staff members and you don't want to go in and individually take out the staff or take out the group, I can just click on that remove all users and it'll automatically remove those users from that particular group.
One group that you may want to keep in mind as well is when you start the new school year, everybody in your staff should be getting, as part of the EdLaw 2D requirement, should be getting some type of training module through KnowBe4 probably, would be a good one. So that would be that like 45-minute Kevin Mitnick video. But as you add staff throughout the year, they may not get that that training module right away. So you could create an additional group that is newly added staff, and as users come in, you can automatically enroll them into that group, and that will automatically deliver that training based on the settings you have in your training campaign.
So with that, we're going to jump over to the actual phishing campaigns, and we're going to walk through really quickly, well, not really quickly, but all the different options that are in here. So you can see right away it gives us a quick breakdown of where our phishing tests have landed. So you can see the one-time baseline test We have our users down here, and then if I scroll down, I can also dictate what type of device that they're clicking from, which is a really nice feature built into this. So this will break it down whether they're checking it from their phone, whether it's from Firefox, Internet Explorer, Chrome, Safari, whatever browser device that they have available. It will break down that demographic into every individual click, which is a nice feature. But as we kind of work across the top, I'm going to start with our campaigns. So you can see here we already have some campaigns that were set up and running, and you can see over here on the right hand side which ones are active and which ones are closed. And at any given time, if I need to go in and edit that campaign, clone it, deactivate it, so if it's one that accidentally went out, we can go and click deactivate. It'll keep the campaign intact. It will just take it off live view, so that way you won't necessarily have to recreate the campaign. I can also do a hide from reporting, so if you're doing kind of a test run or something along those lines, you want the data, but you don't want the data to kind of be included in your overall kind of top-down view of where the district's at, we can select hide from reports, and then we have our delete option. The other nice feature with this is we also have an option up here in the upper right hand corner once our campaigns have completed to download all clickers. So that will provide us a nice little Excel spreadsheet of everybody that's clicked on one of our campaigns. So we will basically have a hard copy of that list at any given time. So to get started, I want to create a campaign. So over here in the upper right hand corner, there's that create campaign button. And you can see right here, we have our form field. So I'm just going to call this webinar test 2. If I could spell webinar right. There we go. And here you can see those user groups that we created previously. I can select the deliver to, and you can see there's my administrators, fishers, and teacher group down there. Depending on who I want to roll this out to, or in this case, if I'm doing a baseline, I can select all my users, and it's going to send an email out to every single user. You can also see here the frequency. So if we're doing a baseline test, we can do it one time. But as you start developing your campaigns throughout the district, I can actually come in. I can set up a bi-weekly or monthly campaign that starts September 1 and goes all the way to July 1. So really, I can set up a whole year's worth of phishing campaigns in one go, add all the categories that I want to be able to send out to my staff members, and basically let it automate itself and let everything kind of run through.
And as far as the reporting goes, with a bi-weekly or monthly, one of those ongoing campaigns that goes over multiple deliveries, all of that reporting is kept in separate containers as well. So month by month or every 2 weeks, you're going to get a separate set of data that you can compare your progress as a district as far as, you know, how aware are the users as they're going through email now. So that's nice to have over time.
Yep. So in this case, we can set the start date. So if I wanted to go to March 29th, I can also set the time. And then our time zone over here. The sending piece, there's two different options here. There is send all emails when the campaign starts, or send the emails over 3 days, but we can change that to however many days we want. So if we really want to spread it out and spread out those campaigns to be over like a 10-day period, a 5-day period, a 20-day period, we have the ability to do that. And then we can also set up the start time, or the business days. We can set it up weeks, months, so on and so forth. One of the things that we kind of don't recommend is where it says send all emails when the campaign starts. What happens is, and we've had it happen before, districts were just kind of testing it out, and they did that send all emails when the campaign starts. So that means at 12:03 p.m. on a Tuesday, every staff member got a really weird email, and they all kind of started talking about it, and they all kind of realized that, hey, something might be up here. So it kind of jaded the baseline test a little bit. So we always recommend to send email over a certain amount of time, so it can be over 4 days, and that way it'll take kind of a swatch of your users as you go through those 4 days and test them individually.
That also, if you send them all at once and they do start to talk about that, I've had a few tech coordinators talk to me about, you know, they don't want to create a panic where suddenly they're getting 1,000 phone calls to the tech department.
Yes.
If teachers realize that they're all getting emails at once, sometimes that causes more communication to come your way. So that's something I generally try and avoid.
Yep. So as we kind of work down the list, we can define the business hours, so it will only send those emails during the course of, in this case, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and you can set up and customize that however you wish. And then we can also select which days we want it to go out. So if we do want those emails to go out on the weekends, just to keep folks on their toes, we can highlight that as well. Underneath that, where it says track activity, so what this will do is, even though your campaign may end 4 days after the 29th, and I can't do the math quick enough to know what date that is, we can track the activity up to 3 days after all of your sending is complete. So it'll basically keep the campaign active. So if people miss the email the first time it came through and they go back and review their email later on, it will still register a response from 3 days all the way up to 3 months after the fact. So if it's just something that sits in their inbox, or if there's one of those folks that have 2,000 unread emails in their inbox at any given time, if they click one of these options, then even if they click it a month and 3 months later, it'll still register as a click for that particular campaign. So moving down the list, we have our categories. So these are all the different categories that you can choose from within KnowBe4 for the phishing campaigns, and we're going to show you kind of the preview area, what that looks like after this. But what I wanted to do is click on the baseline template. So we're doing our baseline phishing test, which takes just kind of a wide array of different phishing examples out there. And the other thing that you have the ability to do is over here on the right hand side, there's this little preview button. If I click on that, we're going to get a quick snapshot of what these emails look like. So you can see there's my join my LinkedIn, my Twitter preview, Facebook.
And the nice thing as an administrator is you have the two options in the top right hand corner. One is you can actually send this directly to yourself immediately. So I could have it send me a copy of this email. It comes right into my inbox, and then I can see actually what it looks like, if you have an email client or something. And then the toggle red flags allows you to see, this ties into the training modules, the Kevin Metnick training video. He goes over red flags that users need to watch for. And these are direct ties to that training. So it kind of correlates these phish tests with that training. And this would be nice for you when you go to kind of introduce this to the staff after your baseline. You can have a couple of these screenshot off of your computer with the flags already identified and talk about why those are things your staff should be identifying as they're reading through their email.
Yep. And you'll notice as we highlight the flags, it'll give us a little message as to why that is red flagged within our system. So we've selected our campaigns, our difficulty rating. You can see we can select however many options that we want here. So I can come in and I can actually select 1 through 5 all the way through. So if I want users to get, a 1-star up to a 5-star, it will do that, and it will do it at random. The good news about this too is when we talked about the reporting before, we'll see not only the clicks that were registered, but each individual user will be able to gauge what star email that they clicked on. So we can tell whether it was an advanced email they clicked on, or if it was a 1-star email that was, like I've talked about in some of the other training, from Macrosoft instead of Microsoft, so they're really kind of on the nose ones. So we'll actually be able to get kind of a good diagnosis of what emails they're clicking on, as well as what our percentages are. So the other piece we have here is our phish link domain. So this is really just if you want that link to come from one specific source, I can select one of these, or I can just keep it at random. So that means every user is going to get a different link or a different email address or something along those lines to kind of change up the campaigns a little bit.
Before we move on, with the phish link domains, generally we recommend leaving it at random. We have had a few instances with Gmail specifically, districts using Gmail, where when users try and click on a link that goes to certain phish link domains, that may be flagged more frequently by Gmail, even if the whitelisting is set up, than some of the other ones. So if you are having issues where you're testing, or you have a user that sends you a screenshot and there's something on the screen that's marking it as a phishing or a potentially malicious site, if you can send that to us, that'll help us work with KnowBe4 to make sure that eventually all of their link domains should be open, but that does require kind of some extra communication with Google, sometimes based on just all their different layers of cloud security. So just keep that in mind. It might just be, if users are getting a flag, it might just be the domain that was used for that specific template.
So as we work through, we have our landing pages, and these are just what basically happens when somebody clicks on this link. And we'll review next what these look like in kind of in better detail, and also that you have the ability to create your own custom landing pages as well. So in this case, we stick with the basic Oops landing page, which is a big red stop sign with a handout saying you've been targeted by this KnowBe4 campaign. It's part of a training initiative, and it kind of lets them know that they accidentally clicked on something that they shouldn't have. And then finally, down here towards the bottom, we have that select group. So we talked about before being able to automatically assign clickers to a certain group. So let's say everybody that clicks on this, we want to put them in the Fisher group. So that what'll happen is when we create our trainings, we can set it up so basically anybody that gets assigned to the Fisher group is automatically assigned this training. So this is where that group portion comes in, is that if particular people click on things, we can kind of isolate them into their own groups and automatically assign training after the fact.
You can also automate so that it delivers more phishing emails to them as well. So if your district is more hesitant to keep on requiring a training module, you could just have the system set up so the people that are clicking get more emails, and hopefully over time we'll start to identify those more readily and be more careful with their inbox.
Yep. So when all is said and done, and I'm sitting right in the way of the button, so it's right behind me. It's a blue button, just so you know. But once we're all set, we can hit Create Campaign. And that'll create our campaign. And because we have it set up to go out on a later date, it'll pop up with the pending status right here.
When you do create a campaign, it does have a 10-minute wait period, even if you set it to go out immediately. So it's going to wait those 10 minutes just for everything to process on the server, and then it'll go out.
So a couple other things that we wanted to review is across the top here. If you wanted to preview everything that KnowBe4 has as far as its different categories, I know when we created the campaigns, it gave us the drop-down menu.
Go system. Yeah.
But if I click on our system menu system templates menu, you can see that all of our categories are broken down by what they look like, and they also have the ranking over here. So if I wanted to assign a banking campaign, I can click on the banking campaign and I can kind of go through, and I can click preview over on the right hand side and it'll give me a breakdown. But what you also saw was that if I came in and physically clicked on one of these links, I have the ability to go in and customize these particular campaigns. So I can go in and I can send it, directly from my school district. I can send it directly from, let's say, superintendent@morick.org, even though that account doesn't exist. We can really go in and fine-tune everything that we're sending out in an email. So we can either keep what they have, or you have the ability to go in and create your own templates. And I just want to click through some of the other ones here. So we have our data breach ones. So here's a Dropbox data breach. Right here, verify email address. Down here at the bottom, Google Dropbox, which isn't a thing. But you have the preview and the ability to go in and kind of look at the different emails that are there and kind of gauge, which tests will be good, which ones will, test your employees to the best of their ability.
Definitely. And some of the brands, for example, Facebook, LinkedIn, Yahoo, all of the main brands are in here, and you can search in the top of the screen for a specific brand if you wanted to. So say your district has a big iOS initiative and you wanted to try and send out an Apple-based one, you can search for that. You can choose one of their templates, and you can either customize it or use it as is within your next campaign as well.
Yep. So just to kind of give you a quick overview, these are some of the Apple ones that are out there. And some of them tied to Groupon. There's your exclusive Apple Watch, which you've won. But you can see, you can kind of get just a top down of what those look like. The other thing that we have the ability to do is from our email templates, but from our landing pages, if I click on that, this is where I can go in and I can kind of see, here's our basic Oops page. Here's our big hand telling us what happened. If you don't like that, there are other ones we can just throw up a 404. So that way it'll just look like the link didn't work. So it just really depends on how transparent you want to be. Or we can have it set up a fake login page, which will register if they try to log in with some sort of account. So you have the ability to kind of go through.
On the
Here's our Rickroll, which is my favorite one.
can't go wrong with the Rickroll.
Yeah.
On the categories, there is a category titled SEI, Platinum Diamond Only. We are Diamond subscribers in the region, so you guys have access to this category as well. I really like these personally because they're customized to the user's behavior. So whatever email your user gets and they click on, it's going to launch out to this page, and it's going to actually show the template they clicked on this page along with the red flags within that template. So these SEI ones are really powerful to make the connection between what they saw in their inbox and the fact that, oh, I actually fell for that. These are more things I need to be more careful on. And again, it ties directly to those training modules as well.
Mm-hmm. So jumping back, and like I said before, we can go in and we can customize these. So if I click on my basic OOPS page, it pulls up my WYSIWYG editor, and it's just like any other editor that you've used in the past. You can go in and you can customize those to be whatever you want. Even if you wanted to put, the district letterhead in it, district logo, anything along those lines to let them know that, even if they don't know what KnowBe4 is, if I put in like the big Morok logo or, whatever my school district is, then they'll have an idea that this was, something that came out by the school district. So
Does make it a little more legitimate for your lower end users sometimes.
yeah.
Anything you do customize goes into the drafts category. By default, I don't think anything in drafts is selectable in a campaign, so you do have to go to the categories tab, create your own custom category, and you can call this anything like, Morok templates or customized templates, whatever you want to call it. And then once you do that, you can move that item from drafts into your new category. So you just select the item just like you do a user, and now you can select the Morok templates and move it. And now when I create a new campaign, that's a selectable landing page that I've customized for my own district, and it was that simple to deploy.
All right. So with that, do we have any questions out there so far? Are we okay?
Nothing yet, no.
Yep, okay. So with that, we've kind of done a quick review on our phishing and our landing pages. Now we want to actually jump into our training modules a little bit. So if I click on the training tab across the top, you can see very similar to the way that the phishing campaigns work. I can come over here to the right-hand side, select Create Campaign, and I'm just going to call it Morok MSP. And I will start this for next week, the 27th at 9 a.m. I can end the campaign at a certain time. So if you want to give staff, let's say, a week to complete the training or something along those lines, we can assign that. We can specify a date. We can have a relative duration of 3 weeks or up to 3 months. Or we can set it kind of open-ended to have no end date.
The no end date is really handy if you do end up creating a group, something like new staff that come into the district after your initial training. The no end date is really handy for those types of groups.
Mm-hmm. So in this case, I'm just going to specify a date, and I'm going to give them a couple weeks, and I'll leave that one set up. I do have the option too, if you have any late starters out there, to allow the assignments to be completed after the due date. So you can kind of get a read of where folks are at in the training. You can open it up and see how much they've completed and how much they haven't, and how many of these assignments that they've completed. This is just one of those things where once it hits April 13th at 2019 at 11:59 p.m., if you still want to allow those folks to be able to submit assignments after the fact. So whether it's a hard stop or not a hard stop. So as we kind of go down the list, you can see here, these are the courses that we've downloaded from the mod store, which is what we're going to tackle next. And like we said before in the trainings, we downloaded kind of these three here, these three non-skips. So we have a 30-minute, a 45-minute, and a 25-minute version. These non-skips, they're basically set up to be, once you sit in and commit to the program, then you have to start and finish it. So if you quit anywhere along the way, you would have to start over from the beginning. They also have ones that are skippable, so they can go in and work on it intermittently. But in this case, we downloaded the non-skip ones just to get everybody started. But once we figure out which campaign that we want to run with our staff members, I can highlight the training. And you can see we have our Kevin Mitnick series, 45 minutes. I can enroll my groups, so just like before with our phishing campaign, I can either select all users, I can assign it to an administrator group or our phishing group. In this case, I'll do it for all users. I can also set it up to enable the courses to be done multiple times. So if you do have folks that don't finish within the due date or anything along those lines, they'll be able to go back all over again. And then we have the ability to add completed users to a specific group. So if I wanted to create a group specifically for folks that have finished the tests and finished the training campaigns, then I can do that. So then I can open up that group. I have a quick list of who completed and who didn't, and then I can go back and assess the other users.
That comes in really handy as you get into your more specified training modules. Say you did a training module that was based on, let's just say, social engineering. You could add the users that complete that training into a new group, and that will, you could set that group up to automatically deliver some phishing campaign emails that are related to that specific topic. So you're trying to see if they actually paid attention and learned from that training. So that's where the automation really can come in handy.
Yeah. And the other thing we can do too is if I come back up to my enroll user group and I click on my phishers, so let's say I want to enroll those folks that clicked on an email into that phishing campaign, I can also set it up to where if they complete the training module for the time being, they will be removed from that phisher group until they click on another link from a campaign and be put back into that group. So if I click on our add notification here, that just basically sets up a welcome campaign. I can set up to a user, manager, administrator, but in this case I can set it up from a user perspective. And this will be the email that staff members will receive when they get their KnowBe4 training. So just to give you a quick preview of that. When I'm all set with my training campaign and I'm happy with the way it looks, am I sure I want to proceed? Yes. And there we go. So now you can see my training campaign has been created within the system.
Before we move any further, there was a question that came through on the chat about, is there a way to have kind of shared templates similar to like a teacher pay teacher structure? So can you go back to the phishing tab, Derek?
Sure.
And then underneath the email templates, there is a section called community templates. And once you've customized a template, you do have the ability to submit it to KnowBe4 for their review, and then they can add it to this community templates. These are all templates that have been customized by different users and approved by KnowBe4, so they're similar to, oh, who doesn't want to go back to the 90s? They're going to be similar to the ones you see in the system templates, but they may be tweaked to have different addresses or be, maybe Apple updated their logo, so someone might update the email to be based on that. So if you do find things that you've created,
sorry,
that's crazy, that you want to share out to the community tab, you can submit those as an administrator for other districts to use. We don't have any mechanism to enable that just within the MORIC region, so that does go out to all KnowBe4 users across the platform. So just keep that in mind if you do decide to go that route, but it is an option within the system.
Yeah, just like before, we can go in and we can preview any one of these, and they also have the difficulty rankings already set up for you as well. All right, so we've done phishing and we've done our training. The next portion we want to jump into is our mod store.
So the mod store is really a nice collection of different materials that you can use to customize your district's KnowBe4 domain. The mod store contains training modules, print materials, and because we're at that diamond level, we actually have access to, there's even a couple of games that are built into the KnowBe4 system that you can push out as a training. So that might be good if you create that kind of remedial clickers group. You could make them complete a game instead of a training module. But we'll show you kind of how this operates. On the right-hand side, you can see there's different filters. So there's different tiers to the software. Again, we're all at the diamond tier. That's why the star is next to it.
Yep. And the good news about that is if you look over here, you can see displaying results of 850 within the category. As soon as I click on my diamond level, you'll see it refresh. and we have all 850. So you have 850 different campaigns that you can run within your district at your disposal.
Also on the left, you can filter down by the duration of the training module. So if you want it to only be a 5 to 15 minute quick hit that they can do, before, after school, on a break, over lunch, you can filter it down to just that duration of time. There's also on the right hand side a filter for what category of content you're looking at. I only want to push out training modules right now, so I'm going to filter down to just training modules. And so now you can see we've kind of filtered this down a bit. The last thing you could really do, the last couple over on the right, would be you can pick a specific target of users. So you could be looking just for executives or just IT staff, whatever the group you're customizing this for. Or you could go down even further, and there's actually different content groups that they've identified. So for example, in K-12, we have to deal with the regulations around FERPA and be compliant with those. They actually have a training module for K-12 education relating to FERPA regulations. So these are training modules that, again, you can be really specific with, like we have in this case with FERPA, or they also have those really generic training modules, like the 45-minute Kevin Mitnick video, that cover a wide swath of topics in less detail.
Yeah, and if you look across the top here, you can see every click I made went into the search filter. So at any time, if I need to take any one of those off, I can just click on the X and it'll remove that particular filter. In this case, it probably won't do too much. But once I see a filter, or not a filter, but once I see a campaign that kind of interests me, I can come in and I can click on our FERPA K-12. And what's nice about it is if I scroll down, I can see kind of a quick breakdown of what it looks like. But up here at the top of the screen, I also have this preview button. So if I click on that, I want to preview it in English.
The family educational
and it'll
rights
actually
and
run
privacy.
through the entire
This
program
course will
with
teach
me.
you about FERPA. The family educational. This course will teach you about the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. FERPA. Click next. This course will teach you about FERPA. You will watch some
There
short
it is,
videos
okay.
and answer some quiz questions after each video.
So if I
You
click
must
inside the
answer
window,
70% correct to pass
As an
this
administrator,
course.
it would let you preview the entire
Here's an
module
outline
if you
of
want
what we'll
to, so you
cover
can
in
go
this
through
course.
every bit of
Let's
it,
begin
or
with
you
the
can just
first
see
topic.
if this
Click
fits your
next to
needs
continue.
quickly, check the first few screens, and then move on. It's totally up to you. And this doesn't reflect in your personal account as an assigned training module. It's just a preview for you.
yep. And if I close out of here and I do decide that this is something that I want to roll out with my staff, if I select Add to Account, where it says Already Added, it is now an available campaign within my KnowBe4 instance. So now I can go back into my training module. I can create, I'll call it FERPA. And if I come down to my content, there's that FERPA K-12 that I just set up. I can set it up for, well, not completed users. I want to enroll all my users into it. And then we can add our notification. Hit save. Create campaign. And now our FERPA training has been created for our staff to be able to go in and complete at their leisure.
So one thing we do want to point out, like we said, the mod store is pretty vast. There's quite a few resources there. If you can go over to the website tab, on our Google site that we've created for you guys for this specific rollout, under the Security Awareness Training Step 5 link, there's a new page called Recommended Training Modules. Derek and I spent some time just reviewing some of the EdLaw 2D topics within the KnowBe4 training modules, and these are some of the ones that we identified as potentials for you. Of course, none of this is anything we're trying to mandate on you. We just tried to lighten your load a bit as far as reviewing some of the content and going through and making sure that it's actually pertinent. So we couldn't live link these because it goes into your individual dashboard and that requires login. But we did identify a handful of the modules that we thought were really good based on the needs of EdLaw 2D and some of the things we've seen within the Mohric region.
So, okay, jumping back. So the next thing we kind of want to talk about is our reporting. So once we have our phishing campaigns completed and folks are starting to complete their different exams, we can actually click on this reporting tab up at the top of our screen. And you can see on the right-hand side here, we can evaluate by risk score, group report card, a user report card, phish prone percentage, I can never say that right, failure types, initial phish prone percentage. So we can really go through and we can break down what kind of report that we want to produce. So in this case, if I select email sent, I can get a breakdown of how many emails were delivered, how many were clicked. So if you do have a sneaking suspicion that I sent out a campaign to 200 users and I haven't gotten anything back, you can very quickly go here and just see if the emails were delivered in some way, shape, or form. So if it flagged positive on the email server side of things, we will get the delivered flag that popped up here.
It's nice, excuse me, it's nice over time too with that report that you can see by template how effective that template is with your specific staff. So even if it's ranked as only a 2-star template, but you've had 25 clicks over your first few campaigns on that specific template, it's probably a topic that you want to focus on moving forward as far as your training modules.
And then we also have our user report card over here. So what I can do is I can come in and I can select one of my users down here, and you can see here's my user risk score, and you can see Joe Chill here has gone down a little bit. User failure types, so this will let us know what kind of failures they've had, if it's been just a click, if it's been an email they replied to, an attachment opened, a macro enabled, or any data that's entered. And it'll also over here give you a breakdown of the exact emails that you're catching them on. So in this case, Joe Chill clicked on the Join My Network on LinkedIn. So in this case, you'll get a email by email breakdown, so you can go back and refer to those templates and see kind of the potential areas that you need to work with your staff. And then you can see here we've assigned 3 different campaigns to our users, and they have been terrible users and have not started them yet. But you can see that it'll show us if they're in progress or if they're completed right here from a quick area. And if I just, down here in the lower right hand corner, I can just select download report, and it'll save it down to the bottom here, and I'm just going to open it up as a PDF. So you can see you can individualize everybody's phish prone report as you see fit. So like I said, there's a lot of different ones here, so I can generate a risk score, and I can also set it up by groups. So if I want to see my Fisher group, oh, nobody's in the phishing group. Let's try my teacher group. Okay. Let's go back. Yeah, let's go back to my administrators. Nope.
No one.
I don't think I've sent a campaign with those groups. There we go. So in this case, you can see kind of the overall breakdown of a particular group. So you can see if my clickers are getting that downturn trend of their risk score as you're kind of moving throughout the year.
So you can also see if you click on the phishing tab, there's also reporting within the phishing tab. So if you go to Fish tab and then reports, this is a nice quick look for you as the program administrator to identify your heaviest abusers of the systems and your most highly offensive clickers. So it's going to break down how many emails have been delivered, how many times they failed, and then it breaks down the different types of failures from there. And it's going to give you your most phish-prone users at the top of this list right from the start. So you can see really quickly if you have a user that's at 300% phish-prone, they keep clicking on emails even after you've only sent it maybe one or a couple of times. So those are users you want to specify training to specifically, or maybe even touch base with individually about being a little more careful with their email going forward.
Yep, and you can see just like an Excel spreadsheet, I can click on the particular area. I'm going to lean over the other way to see the phish-prone percentage.
Take us off screen.
There we go. But you can see that it'll toggle it, so I can kind of filter out by highest phish-prone percentage. I also can create a print version of this report. So it'll give me a breakdown of all of my users and all of their clicks. So if I need to have a hard copy of particular data, I can pull that out as well.
If you can close this.
Yep.
There's one more place I would recommend you do check out as far as reporting. If you can go to the users tab, and then, for example, if you click right on my name, it's going to give you an individualized report for that user. And so here you're going to see the risk score at the top, and this is a good screen to kind of explain this on. There's two scores in the system. There's a fish prone percentage and a risk score. The fish prone percentage is a little easier to explain. That's actually their behavior with the emails. So how many times or how often are they clicking on emails? In my case, it's 0 because I don't actually have an email at this address, but some of these users would have a fish prone percentage. And that personal risk score is a little bit different than that because it takes into account multiple variables. It looks at how they're performing, the behavior with the emails, but also what training have they had. If you do add a booster or a higher risk score to the group that they're enrolled in, we showed you that when we were creating groups, that boosts up their score as well. So for someone like your business official or your treasurer, you may want to give them a higher risk score booster so that they're you can identify them as a higher risk user. They also, the exposure is how often they're seeing different things that could put them at risk. And then if you are using all of the information in the directory on the right, you can identify by job function. Most districts probably won't use that, and that's totally fine. I just wanted to just give you a quick breakdown of what that risk score is versus the fish prone percentage, because there is some confusion sometimes with that.
Yep, and then as you scroll down here, you can see the training setups so that they haven't started, or if a test is past due, a training campaign. But then you can also see basically all the errors that you're getting for that particular user. So if somebody says, I didn't get that email, I can come in and look and say, okay, that particular email was bounced, and I can start looking at that. But then I can actually scroll down and see which emails I've received and which ones I've clicked on. So I can get a kind of top-down view of all of a user's activities on the website.
Excuse me, the last thing that we want to touch on real quick is that ASAP tab is there as well. Again, this is that questionnaire you can fill out to build your own custom checklist of to-dos to get your initiative going, as well as to keep it viable over time. And it's really just a quick set of multiple choice questions or simple input questions. So feel free, if you wanted to have that checklist as a reminder, that is nice to have sometimes as a little prod to keep going with this. You may want to go ahead and fill this out. Other than that, I haven't seen any new questions come in on the chat recently, but is there anything that somebody has a question on that maybe we haven't covered, or any questions come up outside of today's webinar that you want to have us address? Feel free to type them in, or however you want to present those. We did, while we're waiting to see if anybody enters that, can you go back to the website as well?
Sure can.
We have created a new, I'm going to switch this again, a new section of the website called tutorial videos. Here we're going to be releasing videos over time to help you guys get through some of the stopping points that we're seeing. So we did a user video reviewing users, also using the mod store. So these are quick videos. We're going to call this our KnowBe4 Minute series, and Derek and I are just going to create these and release them as we come up with different topics that we see as kind of common issues across the region. So if you guys have any that you want us to create and release here, feel free to let us know. We'd be happy to create more videos, but that's just something we wanted to point out while we were here today.
Yep, and to jump back to the slide deck quick, I just wanted to leave this up, and we'll send the link out again too to everybody, but the link is below for the website for all of the resources. We're trying to not use the URL shorteners, but in this case we will send the links out after the fact, so you guys have access to it, because we are updating the content, like Chris said, hopefully more frequently than not.
So we have had a couple of questions come in that I would like to address. The first one being, if districts start to clean up the rostering in KnowBe4, will that be overridden by anything? The answer to that is not until we set up the Active Directory sync. So we're not going to keep going into district domains and uploading documents, and there's no automated sync set up yet. So if we haven't contacted you to say we're going to be setting up Active Directory for your district soon, you can feel comfortable that you can go in and edit your user lists, and we're not going to overwrite that on you anytime soon. The next one is the fish hook button. I think that's the fish alert button. So if you're using Gmail or the Windows version of the Outlook client, there is something in your account settings of KnowBe4 where you can push out a button that shows up within your email where users can click to report what they think is a phishing email. That's just if you, do you want to open up the web browser on the computer? I think it'd be easier to show than to explain.
Yeah.
So if you can go to the KnowBe4 tab, and then up at the top, if you click on your email address, so dlalonde@markmsp, and go to account settings. Underneath here, there is a section called the fish alert button. I think it's towards the bottom.
Yep.
So here is where you'll go through the steps to download and push out the fish alert button if you want to use that in your district. Don't feel like you have to, especially if you have a lot of Mac users that use Outlook, or if you're not on Gmail, that won't work for you anyways, but this is where you'll go to set that up. If you have specific questions on the setup for your district, of course, let us know, and we can help you with that. Another question that came through is how do bounced emails affect the data on the phishing test? So the only thing it really does is it comes up for you as an administrator as a non-deliverable. It doesn't affect your phish-prone percentage. And obviously, since they're not getting the email, they can't click on it, so the percentage doesn't go up, but it doesn't go down either because they didn't get it. It just shows up in the system as a bounced email, and then you can, as an administrator, see all of those bounces and address those issues. Maybe it's you have the wrong address for a user or something, but that is something that can be fixed.
Yeah. And the other good thing too about KnowBe4 is if they notice that there's multiple bounced emails going out with a campaign, they will reach out, and they have reached out to Chris and I to say, hey, this district had 10 bounced emails come back. Have they said anything to you? And if not, is it something you want us to take a look at? So they're really good about monitoring the system, just outside of what we're doing. So if they see any red flags from their perspective, they've been very good about reaching out to us and letting us know that there's issues.
The last question is relating to training and how are districts approaching training. So this has varied pretty widely across different districts. Some districts are making it outright a requirement. I haven't seen any specifics on whether they're doing credit hours or paying teachers. I think that's going to be a tough call for any district based on your contract with teachers and the unions. Right. But I think a lot of districts are requiring it under the guise of this is part of Ed Law 2D, it's required anyways, and this is just the program that we're giving you that training through. As I see more information on that, I'd be happy to share it. If you have questions on that, though, I would probably talk with probably Eric Fiola, and he can walk you through kind of regionally how administrators are approaching the training topic.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of different perspectives on how districts are intending to roll it out, and then it just becomes a matter of when Ed Law 2D becomes official, how mandatory it's going to be and what bubble that's going to fall under as it's eventually rolled out.
So I haven't seen any other questions come through. Derek and I, of course, will stay connected in the WebEx for a few minutes. Other than that, that's all the content we had for today. If you have questions, of course, reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you anytime.